Good morning, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to the Pune International Centre's third edition of the Asia Economic Dialogue. My name is Shilpa Phadke. It is my honor and privilege to be the anchor of AED 2022. We have an exciting lineup of events over the next 3 days for all our viewers that have joined us from around the world. 2 years after the COVID-19 pandemic sent shockwaves globally, this vital conference will focus on resilient growth and rebuilding. To start the discussions and launch AED 2022, may I please call upon the President of the Pune International Centre, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, to offer his introductory remarks at this inaugural session of AED 2022. Dr. Mashelkar, sir, over to you, please.
Thank you. Our Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Excellencies, Dr. Keheliya, Rambukwella, Minister of Health of Sri Lanka, and Mr. Lyonpo, Namgay Tshering, Finance Minister of Bhutan, our Vice President, Dr. Vijay, Convener of this conference, Ambassador Gautam Bambawale, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Pune International Centre, it is a privilege to extend a very, very warm, very hearty welcome to you all to this 3-day International Geoeconomics Conference. We wish to first thank our Ministry of External Affairs on whose behalf we are holding this conference. I'm happy and proud to say that this is a very special year for India, an year when India is celebrating 75 years of its independence. As a part of this, our Ministry of External Affairs has organized Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav, which means celebration of India's 75 years of independence. This conference also happens to be a part of this grand nationwide celebration. I extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of our beloved city of Pune. It's a great city of culture, education, research, and innovation. Now it is also known as a vaccine city, producing maximum amount of vaccine in a single city in the world. Pune has been historically also a city of great thought leaders, and the present Pune is no exception. We pride ourselves in the fact that Pune International Centre, during a decade-long journey now, has become a leading center of policy research, thoughts, and ideas. We always emphasize that Pune International Centre is an international center in Pune. Our hosting this International Geoeconomics Conference in the form of its flagship annual conference is just one of the manifestations of PIC's Global Outreach Program. It is widely believed that 21st century will be Asia's century. As Asian economies become larger than the rest of the world, and beyond China and India, countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Vietnam start setting the pace. The governance of the global trading system cannot continue to be still OECD-centric. Asia Economic Dialogue can draw the agenda for an accelerated and sustainable global growth with more open and more equitable international trading system. Let me comment on the choice of our themes in AED so far. The theme of AED 2020 was Asia and Emerging International Trading Systems. This meeting was held physically. Little did we know that soon the world will be put in a reset mode and there will be the arrival of a new normal, which will change our lives like never before. We had to hold AED 2021 virtually following the post-COVID new normal. The theme for AED 2021 chose itself, and it was most appropriately post-COVID-19 global trade and finance dynamics. One of the major concerns that stood up during AED 2021 was the huge challenge of recovery and resilience of global economic growth. The critical role of strong collective commitment to global cooperation, trusted partnership, and with a belief in shared recovery, the need to diversify and reconfigure global supply chains, both industrial and financial, building domestic capacities while maintaining openness to the world, these were all considered to be crucial to ensuring recovery and resilient growth. The theme for this year also chose itself, since the world today is not just looking for recovery to what it was in the pre-pandemic days, but growth. And that growth has to be resilient, which can withstand future shocks with adaptability, agility, resilient thinking, reinvention, autonomous innovation, and so on. So the theme for AD 2022 is resilient growth in the post-pandemic world. I'm proud to say that this event has participation by a galaxy of eminent speakers from around the world, around 50 of them from 16 nations. The importance given to AD 2022 by our topmost national leadership is obvious from the fact that we have the privilege of having our Honorable External Affairs Minister grace our inaugural session and our Honorable Finance and Corporate Affairs Minister grace the concluding session. Looking at the quality and impact of AD 2020 and AD 2021, some of our well-wishers have been saying that AD is clearly emerging as a Davos of Asia. We feel very proud. On behalf of PIC, I want to assure our Ministry of External Affairs and also the nation that we at PIC will do everything to live up to that expectation. I'm sure at the end that AD 2022 will be an intellectually stimulating and exhilarating experience with deliberations which will set the mood, the tone, the direction for a better post-COVID world with resilient, equitable, and sustainable growth. Again, a very, very warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our first discussion today on international cooperation for resilient global growth will be moderated by Ambassador Gautam Bambawale. The eminent panelists are His Excellency Dr. Keheliya Rambukwella, Minister of Health from Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Lyonpo Namgay Tshering, Finance Minister of the Royal Government of Bhutan, and His Excellency Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister for External Affairs, Government of India. A very warm welcome to you all. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. And let me once again start by extending a very warm welcome to all our three guests at this inaugural session of the Asia Economic Dialogue 2022. Let's dive straight into our conversations, honorable ministers. And perhaps, if you permit me, let me start by asking the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, what he sees as the main platforms that the government of India utilized in order to handle the public health impact as well as the economic impact of the COVID pandemic. Dr. Jaishankar, the floor is yours, please, sir.
Thank you, Gautam. First of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to be back at this event, and I think it's very, very appropriate. I would like to recognize Dr. Mashelkar as well, and I think I saw Dr. Keheliya on the screen earlier. So, you're all doing a splendid job, and please keep this event going regularly. It's very useful. My greetings to my fellow panelists as well, the two ministers from Sri Lanka and from Bhutan. Now, regarding the question, I think if one looks at it from an Indian perspective, we've essentially had three waves. Okay, the 2020 wave, the March, which started in March and then went on through much of the year. Then back, and then again in 2021, a much more devastating Delta wave. And then at the end of the year, beginning of this year, the Omicron wave. Now, what's the point? When it first came, like the rest of the world, we were completely unprepared. So the efforts were really how to manage the crisis while building capabilities and building capabilities on the run, which is the most difficult thing to do. And when I say building capabilities, I think all of us know that we were literally building from scratch. Because, it says something about us that at that point of time, actually, we were making virtually no ventilators. Even our mass production was very small. N95s were, I think, being made by only 2 companies. The medical requirements were quite inadequate. The idea of isolation centers, of oxygenated beds, all this was something which was really part of. So I think we handled the first wave by really focusing on capability building. Now, the second wave, when the Delta wave came, and again, I share this perspective with you both as an external affairs minister, but also as a minister who was part of the COVID group of ministers, which our health minister was leading. When the second wave came, again, nobody in the world could have foreseen how lethal the Delta variant was, the oxygen pressures that it put, the hospitalization pressure it put. What it did, was compel us really to further raise the quality of public health infrastructure, and again do that in the middle of an extreme crisis. So this time it wasn't just about ventilators, masks, and even dedicated facilities. A lot of it went in putting up oxygen plants and ensuring oxygenated beds, in actually moving to a new level of medicines, because what was prescribed there was of a different nature than what it was in the first wave. Now, the first and second wave really showed up in the third wave, which admittedly was much less lethal, but which was also handled with much greater confidence. Now, one part of what you asked me, Gautam, is relating to our own public health response. I think part of it is a kind of a bricks and mortars response, the fact that we set up more facilities, we improved the quality of existing facilities. Some of it was the innovative response, the fact that we could, produce vaccines on such a massive scale, which the Serum Institute did, but also the fact that we came up with our own vaccine, co-vaccine at that time, and more vaccines to come. Plus the fact that we set up the Convener platform, and we probably were one case of a massive digital response, that we used the digital backbone really to improve the public health response. And then there's the non-medical side. It's often forgotten that a century ago, when the Spanish flu was supposed to have died of hunger, then they are supposed to have died of the flu. Now, to look at it, we have been actually, from the time of the COVID, been giving 800 million people free rations. We've been putting money into the accounts of 400 million people. And all of this is being done without leakage in a country which once upon a time was notorious for leakage. I think there's a lot that is to be said for it. If you are asking me, okay, what were your big takeaways from this experience? One, I would say the all of the government of we saw. Two, the fact that such a massive stress test, you can only come through that by really drawing on your reserves, innovating, extrapolating, multiplying all at the same time. The fact that we could produce more, we could distribute better, we could handle imports. So I think that there's a lot here which needs to be studied. And at the end of the day, I think in many ways, it's also a story of leadership.
Thank you. Could I now turn to the Honorable Health Minister of Sri Lanka, Dr. Rambukwella? And sir, could I ask you the same question? How did Sri Lanka and how did the government of Sri Lanka handle not merely the public health crisis of the COVID problems, but also the attendant economic crisis which most of our countries went through? Honorable Health Minister of Sri Lanka, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. The Honorable Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs, Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, the President of PIC and Dr. Koella, Vice President, PIC Ambassador Gautam Bambawale, and the Convener of Asian Economic Development 22. Our friends over here, well, your question is very timely because the pandemic had always had impact in the complete economic system in the whole world. We were not isolated. I think whole world has impacted, and if you look at all the indicators for all the institutions that deal with indicators, have said that we will have a minus growth rate right across the world. So we will not be sort of singled out in that. We'll be also part and parcel of that whole affair. But having said that, I think financially there are huge impacts because right at the beginning, this was completely, totally unexpected. All our budgets had no provisions for this. Taking in terms of economic impact, and then also the provision of the various affected people were an issue for us. However, we managed to cut down on certain infrastructure or certain areas, and then also gave priority to welfare sector, which was needed at that point in time. We had some serious concerns with regard to getting the vaccine. 7.8 billion people across the 194 countries all over the world, I think, was fishing out to get the vaccines. And I think we must extend our gratitude to India. Particularly the first 500,000 vaccines came from there as a form of a donation. We have had the experience. We, in fact, ordered something like 12 million, but the serum company had a problem, I think, there. So India came out to assist us in a big way at the initial stages. So there were certain delays, in fact, due to the, I suppose, the demand and supply and demand. And as Dr. Jaishankar very clearly mentioned, we didn't know the requirement of mask even, or the PP kits, or the personal protective kits. So I must extend a big thank you to the health staff of Sri Lanka, because with all these risks, none of the members of our health staff, starting from the consultants to the laborer, they never left the hospitals, or they took up the challenge with the minimum kind of resources, because we were not prepared. And gradually we managed to get into the vaccination. Right now we are quite happy with the vaccination. Vaccination, the first and the second dose, we have almost got 100% up, 98% to 100% on some. Third one, also we are just passing 50%. The curves are favorable, but economic impact is there. So we really didn't know at that point of time as to how to make provisions for it. But we are getting assistance from many areas, and our neighbor, I must again mention our neighbor, the India is always at hand, and then have been helping us throughout, right? So as far as we are concerned, we are managing, and I think one thing that I must mention very specifically, our home management thing has been recognized by all over the world, and the WHO, I think, made a special remark on that because our facilities were, when the pandemic started, we had only 2 labs available. We had only about 3 or 4 beds, ICU beds, which we ran into now about 700. We have now about 40 laboratories, and then we have various other matters to check the variants of like the Delta to Omicron. So we have moved forward, very much from where we were to manageable and completely take over control over it. The home management system, because we had the experience from all over the world where people flocked into hospitals, and the hospitals, how the hospitals had a challenge of managing affairs. So we immediately did the home-based activity, and with the SMS, within half an hour, each home was visited by one of the officers of the area, and that gave a lot of confidence. And we now, last week, we hit the 150,000 people who were treated in at homes, and then only one unfortunate case where we had one death, and only 1,400 required hospitalization. And that was a great achievement. So that is how we managed it. If I mean, I won't imagine, it's dreadful to imagine the 150,000 coming into the hospitals. It would have been a disaster and a total nightmare. So that's where we manage our affairs. Economic wise, I think we are having problems mid-term and long term. I'm sure that we are having a constant discussions and trying to manage the activities of economic activities. Yeah, that's where we stand at the moment.
Thank you so much. And if I could now turn to Lyonpo Namgay Tshering, the Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, and ask him a similar kind of question of how the Royal Government of Bhutan, how Bhutan has handled both the public health aspects as well as the economic aspects of the COVID crisis. Lyonpo, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Gautam, for this very exciting opportunity. And I would like to again thank His Excellency Dr. S. Jaishankar as a host minister, Minister of External Affairs, for giving us this very good opportunistic platform to share our experience. And I join my colleague Minister of Health from Government of Sri Lanka to share some of our experience from a public health aspect, as well as the mitigation that we have put in place to respond to this pandemic economically. On the public health aspect, I think the experiences were not that different, except that Bhutan has not experienced a full-blown outbreak, which we actually don't expect as a landlocked country first, and secondly, with given a lot of constraints with our human resources and the resources. So in that sense, I think in Bhutan, from the public health front, I think as much as I'm concerned, I'm glad to share that we had imposed one of the most strictest containment protocols and norms in place. Upon the detection of the first case back in March 2020, we have immediately imposed we have immediately suspended the arrival of the international tourists in the country, closed the international borders. We have also established national and regional COVID task forces, which are supported by the incident command offices in all the districts and sub-district level. So indeed, we were on the footing, but the sad part is that we were not so sure about, unaware of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and that's the case elsewhere in the world. But I think as we moved on, I think we had to again impose a mandatory 21 days strict quarantine, and the global standard set by WHO actually requires the country to have a maximum of 14 days quarantine, but we have sticked on having 21 days quarantine with the free expenses being paid by the government, and we still continue that 21 days quarantine for the international arrivals. We have also imposed, I think, a country, as some of our neighboring countries were actually having a tough time with outbreaks. I think we had actually had a good lead time before we experienced a full-blown community transmission, but cases were very, very minimal. So we have started zoning the country into red, and as per the WHO definition, especially the bordering districts along the international border lines were graded as a red district. So we have also imposed a 7 days mandatory quarantine for domestic travelers who are traveling from high risk districts to the low risk districts, and thousands travels every day. And that the quarantine costs were also being met by the government just to ensure that their livelihood is also protected at the same time, when we actually give a lot of emphasis on protecting lives. So I think a lot of I would call it a gold standard kind of a protocol in our own term, and this has really helped us to contain the spread of the virus. And as the distinguished panelist must be well aware that His Majesty, our beloved King, in the forefront of this battle against the pandemic, has actually mobilized almost 25,000 uniformed volunteers. We call it Desups. So if I translate in English, that's called the Guardian of Peace. So basically, this group of volunteers have actually aided the country during the nationwide lockdowns, as well as any kind of a disaster. So this has become very handy and very instrumental in our country's response towards this pandemic. And indeed, when we embarked on this our fight against this pandemic, I think the country has really set a very big objective that we want to ensure and prioritize lives over livelihood. So basically, livelihood was also not really undermined, but I think at this point in time, in order to ensure there's a sustained livelihood, we have almost 47,000 plus individuals who are laid off, especially from the service sectors. And these individuals were currently being taken care of with a monthly the income support from His Majesty's relief measures. So His Majesty has done so much so that he has even sacrificed his own personal saving to meet the monthly installment, monthly income support for the laid off staffs. And now the numbers has actually crossed 55,000, and 55,000 in a country's context is a big number actually. So on the economic front, I think before I touch on the economic front, I would like to again reiterate my sincere thanks to government and people of India for actually sparing us and prioritizing Bhutan with the 500,000 doses of Covishield. That has actually set a tone for our accelerated drive for vaccination. And currently we have achieved over 95% vaccination coverage above 12 years of age. And coming March, first week, we will be rolling out the vaccination for children between 5 to 11 years. So from there, I think we are gradually moving towards more relaxations. And we thought we are very much optimistic. And the situation has proven that vaccination is very effective with the ongoing spread and ravage caused by the Omicron variant. So I think on the vaccination front, on the prevention front, I think we're doing fairly well. So lastly, on the economic front, I think a lot of measures were put in place. We have actually implemented an economic contingency plan back in 2020, focusing on three broad sectors like agriculture, tourism. In the absence of tourism, we're taking this as an opportunity to leverage and develop some new tourism products to make it world ready during the post-pandemic. And we have also embarked on building skills to meet growing employment the demand during the pandemic. So I think a lot of things have taken place, and especially on the monetary and fiscal measures, we have, just like in India, we also had put in place the national credit guarantee schemes as a counter-cyclical measure to support the CSIs and startups, and it is responding quite well. And yet again, I think His Majesty has actually sacrificed his own personal savings, and to the extent that he has also floated his own personal share in the market and sold off all shares to meet to help the individuals with the loan account to lessen the debt burdens on the individual through interest subsidy. So I think there are a lot of measures being placed. And having said that, I don't mean to say that while we are focusing on protecting lives, livelihood is not impacted. I think livelihood is impacted elsewhere in the world. and we're no exception to that. But I think we're trying our best with a lot of mitigation measures, and we're hopeful that that with the impressive vaccination coverage, with the new technological advancement in our region, especially led by a country like India, I think we see a lot of opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lyonpo. Let me circle back to the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India. And since the theme of our conference is we're looking forward towards a post-pandemic world, and especially how we can foster resilient global growth as we move ahead, let me ask him, how important is international cooperation in fostering global growth? And particularly because we have ministers from our neighborhood, how important is the neighborhood in that process?
Sure, Gautam. Look, I'm actually speaking to you from Paris, where I'd come for an Indo-Pacific ministerial forum. And before that, the week before, I was in Australia for a Quad meeting. Now, I mentioned that to you because at any international gathering that I go to, and in my dealings with other foreign ministers, and during this COVID period, I've actually probably spoken to maybe about 125, on 100, something like that. That would be the number of conversations I would have had with my counterparts. Expectation of what we can do on the vaccine front, what we can do on the medicine front, what we can do on the digital front, a sense that today India has something to bring to the table, and that's something which is necessary for a global recovery. Now, in fact, if you were to look in global terms, there are really, I would say, two baskets. In physical supply chain terms, a kind of a resilient, reliable supply chain concern. And you can also see that expressed, for example, in the recent upgrade we have done in our relationship with the UAE. The fact that they, after the COVID experience, have a greater sense of trust in the fact that India will step up. And on the digital side with trust and transparency. But coming to the neighborhood, because that's an important message I want to send with my two colleagues on the screen. Look, we keep saying neighborhood first. First must deliver, especially in times of difficulty. We have seen livelihoods devastated. Some countries, obviously, those who have a greater international exposure, like Sri Lanka, have had to take a higher degree of a hit. Perhaps, everybody's taken a hit. Maybe just in the case of Bhutan, it's very clearly, because of tourism and other factors, the problems that a country like Sri Lanka faces. There are still countries which are going through the health problems. Even now we are supplying vaccines to Afghanistan and to Myanmar. So the message I have is, this is a time for India to actually step up its support to its neighbors, look at each one of them, sit with them, understand what their problems are, and see what we can do. Now, again, I come back to Sri Lanka because Minister Rambukwella is in front of me virtually. And this is a very big concern we have right now. We know that they have a balance of payments issue. We know that they need a regular supply of fuel and essential commodities. And I do want to say that India will be a reliable friend. This is the time for us to demonstrate that neighborhood first really delivers, not just in terms of lines of credit, but also in terms of investments. In terms of, if Indian tourists go out, if Indian business goes out, if even the Indian government, if there are investments we can make, which will shore up other people's economy and, expand employment, this is really what they need at this moment. And I can assure them that India will rise to that occasion.
Let me turn to Dr. Rambukwella. Sir, how important is international cooperation for fostering growth as we move ahead? And how do you respond to the message very clearly delivered by the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India that India is going to be standing by your side in this process. Dr. Rambukwella, sir.
That's the biggest pillar that we have to stand by in a fallout situation. I think Dr. Jaishankar, I must extend my thanks, not only me, my president, Prime Minister, the Parliament, the entire people of Sri Lanka is ever thankful to you, because last night we had a 3-hour discussion, including the governor and the Treasury Secretary and President, myself and a few other ministers. And the entire thing was centered around us Indians' assistance with regard to the fuel and various other things. I think I must be very frank about it. I'm not ashamed to say that. It was most welcome, and then it was discussed in detail. Where we have a certain crisis, I think we manage in the food crisis, or other food activities. We are having a serious concerns about the fuel, and I think India has come in a big way to assist us. And we are looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term. As Dr. Jaishankar, Minister, External Minister, as he expressed, we are looking at investments as well. As you know, Sri Lanka was looking at, we were targeting 3 million tourists, out of which majority was Indian tourists, and that had sort of slowed down a bit. And then our income we estimated, or rather we experienced last year or years before, is around $5 billion, which has come down by about 70%. Now that's one area. The other area is the foreign employment, which brought us about 6 billion, 6.5 billion. That has come down again like 50%. So we have a foreign currency crunch, and we are looking at various other activities, and then also looking at being self-sufficient in certain areas. Of course, those are mid-term and long-term. And also that we have invited India to invest. And then I think we are looking at the port investment, the petroleum investment, and various other areas. And India has always been very helpful to us in terms of not only just assistance by giving us 500,000 doses of vaccine, but much more to it on a permanent sense of investment and kind of thing. So once again, I take this opportunity to thank. Worldwide, I suppose it is the same thing, but Sri Lanka is a very small economy. And so therefore, when we have a situation of this nature, we need assistance. So it was a different experience with tsunami. Tsunami was only few countries were affected. So there were so many other countries who could extend their hand to us and then sort of support us to overcome within no time. But here it's the whole world is affected. So they are also having their quota of issues to sort it out. A country like India dealing with 1.3 billion people, sort of is something that needs commendment, as to how they can manage with all that. And then suddenly you had a surge of victims and then kind of infected people. So with all that, you have not forgotten the neighbors once again. And then I think our relationship between the neighbors are quite good, and then with the new government. And I know personally the President, His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa, spoke to head of state a few times with regard to the vaccines and various other assistance, and never a time that it was turned down. I think it was always accommodated. So we, as I've told you, we are not trying to hide things or trying to avoid things. We are definitely having a economic issue. We are trying to solve that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Let me turn to Lyonpo Namgay Tshering, the Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, and ask him the same question about international cooperation and its importance. Unfortunately, Lyonpo, we are running out of time. So if I could limit you to just 2 minutes, please. Thank you so much for your understanding.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I think indeed I might not take that much also, because basically whatever I want to hear. So as always, India has always been on side, as well as our neighboring countries. And His Excellency S. Jaishankar has already made a mention reinforcing India's continuous support and commitment to the neighbors. And Bhutan, as you know, that we being a largely an import-driven country, and our trading partners being almost 90% being with India. So during the pandemic, we are yet again very grateful to India for your precious gift of 500,000 doses of vaccine, which actually have made a lot of difference in our country. And of course, as I've mentioned, we being a import-driven country, despite the challenges that you have in your own context, but you have ensured that there's a seamless trading supply of goods without any hindrances, even during the height of the pandemic. So that itself is a noble gesture that we will always bear in our mind. We will always be grateful to India. And one thing that I want to say is, Bhutan being an aggregate-based society, a country, so we want to, in presence of His Excellency S. Jaishankar here, we want to reiterate that still now it is being facilitated, but further we would like to seek a continuous support of the export of RNR, the produce from Bhutan to India. So there are a lot of issues with the implementation of GST in India, and there are a lot of phytosanitary requirements. So basically, there will be a lot of, I see a lot of the areas of collaborating between two countries and facilitate those the issues. And during the post-pandemic, of course, as raised by the Sri Lanka as well as Honorable Minister from India, we need to have an enhanced investment, and balance of payment is a critical issue for a country like Bhutan. So indeed, we are very grateful to yet again with India because of the soft arrangement that we have between our central government and RBI. So I think a lot of issues has been resolved, but furthermore, we see a lot of opportunities to have a collaborative move forward to ensure there is a resilient recovery from this during the post-pandemic. And at the same time, with the digital interconnectedness of the world, with the digitalization, we see that a lot of opportunities that we can engage more and more with our neighboring countries in the region, as well as beyond the region in the world. So I would like to thank the distinguished panelists, and especially with India, for all your generous support. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That we are totally out of time, and let me just conclude by thanking all three of the honorable ministers for being with us at this first part of the inaugural session of the Asia Economic Dialogue 2022. Thank you, and back to our anchor, Shilpa. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Bambawale. Thank you, honorable ministers. That was a most interesting and informative roundtable. Part 2 of the inaugural session will feature a conversation on green energy for a sustainable future between Mr. Mukesh Ambani, Chairman and MD, Reliance Industries Limited, and Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, President, PIC.
Good morning. I wish to extend a very, very warm welcome to all of our distinguished participants in this fireside chat with one and only Mr. Mukesh Ambani on a very, very critical, very, very timely subject, green energy for our sustainable future. First, I have the privilege and honor of introducing Mr. Mukesh Ambani. Mukesh Bhai, as we all call him affectionately, is the Chairman and Managing Director of Reliance Industries, India's largest private sector organization. Reliance operates across energy, materials, retail, digital services, and media and entertainment sectors. I have an abundance of personal affection and personal admiration for Mukesh Bhai. And that admiration comes from watching Mukesh Bhai from close quarters, coming from the same alma mater that he does, being on the board of directors of Reliance for almost 15 years, having chaired the Reliance Innovation Council for a decade, and now chairing the Reliance New Energy Council. I've seen him in action. I've personally seen him deploy amazingly bold and often audacious looking vision and backing it up with hands-on leadership. I call Mukesh Bhai an inspiring exponential leader, inspiring and exponential. He believes in not just innovation-led growth, but disruptive innovation-led exponential growth. His Jio helped India pole vault in mobile data consumption from 155th position to number 1 position, not 200, number 1. And with benefits of excellence of 4G LTE to 450 million customers with affordability of free voice and data for 4 rupees per GB, the cheapest in the world. That's why I said affordable excellence. Reliance under its leadership has provided to hundreds of millions affordable excellence. Mukesh Bhai has received many, many global accolades. It will take me half an hour, but I will just say that he has been on the Time 100 most influential list, Fortune Great Leaders list. You are named among the top 5 best performing CEOs in the world by the Harvard Business Review, and the list goes on. Finally, like his legendary father, Mukesh Bhai is an extreme innovator who believes in putting purpose before profits, in exponentially expanding the business. His unique ability of imagining the future and designing and executing a clear roadmap to achieve stretched goals is unmatched. Mukesh Bhai is an iconic leader. His vision is as big as his heart. He had the admirable ambition and aspiration of doing well by doing good, to make a difference to billions of people by converting every adversity into an opportunity. So very, very warm welcome to you, Mukesh Bhai. Truly grateful to you that you accepted our invitation to have this fireside chat from our Pune International Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mashelkar, for your kind words. You've always encouraged me, and I have always looked up to your mentorship and your guidance. As I'm virtually in Pune, in this virtual world, let me begin by paying my homage to my very good friend and an eminent citizen of Pune, Shri Rahul Bajaj, who passed away recently. He was my senior and one of India's most respected industrialists. My heartfelt condolences to his family. Dear friends, I warmly congratulate the Pune International Center for organizing this important summit. Pune has always been a reputed center of education, arts, culture, and industry. Along with its strength in manufacturing, Pune has also become a formidable hub of the IT industry. Now, with events like this one, Pune has earned a place on the global map of intellectual discourse. I am sure Pune International Center will scale new heights of prestige and influence. And this is because of the leadership of 2 great men of vision and action whom I deeply respect and admire. You, Dr. Mashelkar, are a guru of science and technology. You have planted into all of us at Reliance the seed of disruptive innovation. And for me, everything that you introduced was really implementation of your vision. So I don't want to take that credit. All of us at Reliance will ever be grateful to you to have built in Reliance and our young people this DNA of innovation, inventing, and trying to do what no one else has done. The other leader at the Pune International Center is Dr. Vijay Kelkar. Again, he is one that I have looked up to for decades, and he has not only with his vast knowledge of the economy, of how India works, finance, he was when I was very young and he was chairman of the BICP, he had mentioned to me that, look, young man, government can never be a profit guarantee corporation. And to hear that in the early 80s really formed my vision of the world. And I am ever grateful for him, and to build Reliance as an institution which competes fairly and fiercely with the rest of the world. I think that I really look upon and thank Dr. Keheliya for all the advice and the influences he's had over me over the past many decades. So for me, it is a particular pleasure to be with all of you. I wish I could have been there physically, but times are getting too normal. And it's really a privilege to be amongst both of you together. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mukesh Bhai, for your most gracious, most kind words. Mukesh Bhai, as you know, we at Pune International Center are holding this issue Economic Dialogue 2022 with the support and blessings of our External Affairs Ministry. Our theme this year, as you know, is resilient growth in the post-pandemic world. And before we begin our discussion on green energy for sustainable future, may I ask you about your thoughts on Asia's future and the place of India in particular?
Well, Dr. Mashelkar, it is becoming more obvious with each passing year that the 21st century will be Asia's century. The center of gravity of global economy has clearly shifted to Asia. From the 1st to the 18th century, Asia was leading the world in global GDP. After suffering a retreat in the last 2 centuries, Asia is now making a strong comeback. In 2020, Asia's GDP, as we all know, overtook the GDP of the rest of the world combined. By 2030, the Asian region is expected to contribute roughly 60% of global growth. We should also remember that Asia accounts for 60% of the world's population. More Asians will join the middle class in the next 2 decades than the combined population of all other countries, which means Asia is leading the march towards a more inclusive global economy. The mismatch between demography and development is closing. All this goes to show that a resurgent Asia will contribute to a more equal world. This is a most welcome trend. The trend is also reinforced by the fact that India is likely to overtake Japan as Asia's second largest economy and the world's third largest economy by 2030. Dr. Mashelkar, I am very confident that the India growth story will be as exciting, if not more, than that of the China in the coming decades to come. It is India's time.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's so inspiring. 21st century as Asia's century. Mukesh Bhai, let me now turn to our theme, which is green energy for our sustainable world. Let me begin by asking you, why green energy? Or in your words, why new energy?
Well, to my mind, the answer is very simple and well known. All of us as humanity have only one planet. There is no planet B. The only planet in the entire universe, which is home to human life and to countless other living species, is planet Earth. And planet Earth is facing an existential crisis because of climate change. The climate crisis is essentially an energy crisis. The excessive use of fossil fuels in the past 200 years has gravely endangered the fragile ecology of the planet. Of course, it has brought prosperity to a large part of the global community. But this prosperity has been at the cost of the planet's environment and ecosystem, and therefore unsustainable. Climate change is the biggest threat today to mankind's future well-being. It is an even graver threat to plant and animal species, which are indeed our planetary relatives. After all, humans, animals, and trees are not adversaries competing for space on this planet. They are linked by countless forms of cooperation and symbiosis. As a lover of wildlife and nature myself, and as someone who likes to spend time in nature parks, wildlife sanctuaries, I can tell you that we have a responsibility to conserve all these precious gifts of Mother Nature and pass them on to our future generations. Therefore, the transition from old energy to new, green, and clean energy is not an option. It is an urgent imperative. Our very survival depends on how quickly we embrace planet-friendly renewables like solar, wind, and hydrogen. And one more thing, energy transition will also determine the geopolitical transition in the 21st century. As you know, Dr. Mashelkar, when wood was replaced with coal, Europe overtook India and China to emerge the world leader. Similarly, with the emergence of oil, the US and West Asia outgrew others. When India becomes not only self-sufficient in green and clean energy, but also a large exporter, it will help India emerge as a global power. India will demonstrate that prosperity for all people and prosperity for our planet are not mutually contradictory goals. This transition will have other benefits as well, such as a huge number of green jobs. It will also mean massive foreign exchange savings, since energy and electronics are today India's biggest import goods. Finally, green and clean energy ensures better health and better quality of life for everyone on the planet. Therefore, I believe that the transition to new energy will indeed lead to a new earth-friendly industrial revolution.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Earth-friendly industrial revolution. Mukesh bhai, I heard about industrial revolutions that moved from industry 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to industry 4.0, but not earth-friendly industrial revolution. Sounds very, very interesting. Can you please explain this grand vision of yours to our audience of Asia Economic Dialogue 2022?
So, Dr. Mashelkar, if we see the trajectory of the first three industrial revolutions, we find that they basically disrupted the harmony between human beings and nature. The economic growth in the past few centuries was premised on the principle of control and exploitation of nature and natural resources, or Earth's resources. In contrast, the transition to green and clean energy represents a disruption of a reverse kind. I think we are now beginning to learn from Mother Nature. Our new energy technologies are mimicking Mother Nature insofar as they convert sunshine and hydrogen in water into electricity. Mother Nature has also created a virtuous carbon cycle in which carbon is not a liability but an asset. In course of time, carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies will attain scale and help reduce the carbon load in the atmosphere. There is another way in which new energy represents an earth-friendly industrial revolution. In the era of fossil fuels, industrial activities are highly centralized. This is because coal and oil are centralized in their origin and have to be transported large distances. In contrast, in the coming era of abundant and affordable clean and green energy, with utility scale battery storage, it is possible to envision that every house, every farm, factory, and habitat could in principle free itself from the grid by generating its own power. The world is also developing technologies that use less land to produce all the more we need. You always say that more from less, and that is what is happening at a world scale all around us, which means we can earmark more land for forests, which also acts as a natural carbon sequester. This is what I mean by the need to transition from industrial revolution to ecological revolution, or the earth-friendly industrial revolution. The vision of an earth-friendly industrial revolution has prompted Reliance to adopt care for the planet along with care for the people as the guiding principle of everything we do in all our businesses and philanthropic activities.
Oh, that is fantastic. And Mukesh bhai, you have often talked about 3Ds, I remember, namely digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. And Reliance has been, of course, deeply involved in all 3Ds. But you also always talked about your dream of India that is not a follower, but a leader. India as a leader. Can India emerge as a global new energy leader?
I have absolutely no doubt that India can and India will emerge as a global new energy leader. Just see, right, we were among the first in the world where our renewable energy minister announced a hydrogen policy. When the world is still grappling with this, we have put our vision of exporting green energy out of India on the table. So we are early. I believe that our Prime Minister believes in ensuring that this next generation of Indians will not only be self-sufficient and Atmanirbhar in their energy, but India can export green energy. And my optimism and confidence really stems from three further reasons. First, India is a country full of entrepreneurial spirit, innovation, and youth. Second, we now have proactive and forward-looking policy support and action from our government, both at the central and the state level. And third, our entrepreneurs now have assured financing options. Let me elaborate, Dr. Mashelkar. I have immense faith in the ability of our young entrepreneurs. They are highly ambitious and highly talented, and I'm fortunate to see a lot of them in action all around. I foresee that at least 20 to 30 new Indian companies in the energy and tech space will grow as big as Reliance, if not bigger, in the next 10 or 20 years. Let me put this in perspective for our audience. It took Reliance about 15 years to become $1 billion company, 30 years to become a $10 billion company, 35 years to become a $100 billion company, and 38 years to touch 200 billion. I have no doubt that the next generation of Indian entrepreneurs will achieve this in half the time. What this also means is that India's community of entrepreneurs will become broader and wealth creation will also become more inclusive. This makes India a more equal nation. Let me make another prediction. India's technology and digital exports have risen to 150 billion from less than 10 billion 20 years ago. By 2030, I believe they will exceed $500 billion. Similarly, India's clean and green energy exports in the next 20 years, at the end of 20 years, also have the potential to have $500 billion of export. In the last 20 years, we were known for India's emergence as an IT superpower. The next 20 years, I believe, will be, along with technology, our emergence as a superpower in energy and life sciences. What is commendable is that the new energy business in India are standing on their own 2 feet with their own entrepreneurship and very little support or basis of any great government subsidies. Technological progress will make energy affordable on the basis of commercial viability, and it will be technology and the entrepreneurial spirit and the new business model that gives values to customers that will drive the business and not government subsidies. And that's encouraging about the new energy opportunities that I see.
Oh, that's, my heart was pumping with talking about this. It is so inspiring, such an awesome vision, Mukesh bhai. But as we know, our feet are on ground, and there is always a concern that technology must be backed up by policy investments. Do you foresee any hurdles there? Of course, you have referred to the progressive policy, but want to just revisit this particular part so that we know how we are going and your views in terms of the future.
Well, let me share with you my perspective. India is today one of the most attractive opportunities for renewable energy investment anywhere in the world. As far as policy is concerned, at least I believe that the government of India is extremely committed to promoting new energy, and among all countries in the world, we have been proactive, unlike the past, and I believe that we are at the leading edge of policy development, and all of these policies are transparent and pro-consumer. And the commitment begins at the highest level from our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi himself, right from the days of Gujarat. As you know, he is a big proponent of renewable and clean energy. The government is proactive in meeting the financing needs of the new energy sector. The recent announcement in the union budget about the launch of sovereign green bonds is a step in that direction. India achieved its target of 40% power generation of renewables, right, of the target that it had set for 2030 in 2021 itself. And I believe that we will be ahead of this target. India aims to achieve 500 gigawatt of renewable power capacity, which I'm sure we will meet. So right now, on the basis of what I see, I am very optimistic.
Wonderful. This is very, very reassuring. Mukesh bhai, you always tell us about speed, scale, and sustainability, in which again, Reliance is a leader. So coming to India, what are the other factors that will favor India's transition to new energy with speed and scale? Because time is that of the essence, and impacting the largest number of population is the big challenge. So what are those factors for fast transition?
So Dr. Mashelkar, as you and I both believe that, India's progress is unstoppable. We will become a $5 trillion economy. We will become a $10 trillion economy. We can only argue about whether it will happen in 25 or 27 and whether 10 will happen in 2030 or 32. So when that happens, right, the quality of life of every Indian has to improve. Today, our per capita energy consumption is 1/3 of the world. I think that for quality of life of all Indians, right, we will have India's own domestic demand for energy will be enormous. Indians are already known for having one of the most eco-friendly and sustainable lifestyle. An average Indian's annual carbon emission is about 1/5 of the average Chinese or 1/8 of the average American. So even if it increases, we will be able to meet it. In fact, an average Indian's carbon emission are less than half of the world average. Indians won't have to make too many lifestyle changes to become carbon neutral. India's per capita income, while today is about $2,000 compared to Europe's 38,000. I believe that progressively we will reach $10,000 per capita in the next 15 to 20 years. And this will increase our energy demand. And at the same time, we will be able to meet our incremental energy at affordable rates because of the progress that we are making in technology and because of the abundance of renewable resources that nature has blessed our country with. So I believe that India will be among the fastest growing large economy, and our energy needs are going to double in the next couple of decades. India will overtake the European Union as the world's third largest economy, in my view, by sometime around 2030, 2032. So India has to address its triple challenges. One, India must increase energy output to drive double-digit GDP growth. And we have to do it at an affordable basis on the use of technology. Second, India must increase the share of green and clean energy in this enhanced output. And third, India must achieve the goal of self-reliance or Atmanirbhar Bharat in pursuing the above two challenges. This, of course, cannot happen overnight. For the next 2 or 3 decades, India's dependence on coal and imported oil will continue. But we must have a plan to eliminate that in the next 2 or 3 decades. Hence, in the near and medium term, we will have to follow low carbon and no carbon strategies of development. Affordable and abundant supply of clean energy will enable every Indian an improved standard of living without disturbing the ecological balance. And this generation has the responsibility to put its successive generations on a path whereby we remain perpetually clean. We have the responsibility of being the transition generation.
I think this is very, very exciting as a scientist, as a technologist. I look at these grand challenges and find them extremely interesting. The issue is the following. I mean, there are all these new energy technologies, some of which we are creating, some of which we are adopting. But again, the essence is doing it swiftly. So do you think India can embrace these new energy technologies swiftly?
Well, I think that from my experience and my perspective, right, this is modular and decentralized. When we build centralized plants, or when you even build, say, nuclear plants for energy, right, they take a lot of upfront design, they take a lot of infrastructure, and they take between 4 and 6 years. What happens in the decentralized energy world is, yes, you take some time to innovate, get the product right, but then there is modular execution. So this is the same as exponential change, right? So we all know that exponential, if you walk 20 linear steps, you'll walk 20 meters, right? If you walk 20 exponential steps, you'll go 20 times around the earth. And clearly, I think all of us will be surprised by the rate at which this technology catches up, because it is decentralized and modular. Right? Once you have the right efficiencies, then you don't need to really, it is, and I say it very simply to all our people, that this is about everybody can run on their own speed at their own things. You're not holding hands and running so that everybody doesn't fall down at the same time. And that is why it's a completely different execution style. And I'm a believer in decentralized execution.
Yeah, Mukesh bhai, right from Papa's time, phone call at the cost of a postcard to your days when you said voice is free. You always set audacious targets. And I understand you had recently announced such an audacious target for, I mean, maybe sort of we can talk about it, this 111 target that has excited the whole world.
We really believe that in the next one decade, right, we have to shoot to make sure that we bring about all these technologies that I mentioned to produce hydrogen at $1 a kilo and make sure that we transport and convert it also at less than $1 a kilo. And so that's really like, and from my point of view, I am your chela, so and Professor M.M. Sharma's chela, so I like first principles. And fundamentally, this is as near to stoichiometry as we can get. So we have left not much space. So if we can do this, we cannot do any better. And I always believe that aiming high and failing is allowed, but aiming low is not allowed. So that was the reason behind this impossible goal. Whereas, as we work on it, it doesn't look that impossible. I think that we will be able to do plus minus 20% of that, but aiming high is always good. Thank you, Dr. Mashelkar. As usual, like it was always an engaging and engrossive conversations. And I just wanted to summarize my 5 key messages for your audience.
Mm-hmm.
First is that the climate crisis is an existential crisis for the planet Earth, and the entire world must overcome this crisis with the highest level of cooperation and partnership. The second is that we as humanity and the world must make a rapid transition from old energy to new energy, which is necessary for mankind's larger transition from an industrial revolution to an ecological or an earth-friendly revolution that we must all embrace. The third is that India will lead this transition from fossil fuels to green and clean energy and will become a leader of solar and hydrogen energy in the coming decades. It's an opportunity worth seizing for India as we march from our 75th anniversary of India's independence this year to our centenary in 2047. Fourth is our young and super talented entrepreneurs will make India a green energy superpower in the next 20 years in the same way that India became an IT superpower in the last 20 years. And finally, the fifth is that we at Reliance are deeply committed to playing a leading role in creating India's green economy with large-scale generation of green employment opportunities across India. And I once again wish everybody at the Pune International Center my warmest greetings, and thank you very much for inviting me for this chat with you, Dr. Mashelkar.
Thank you very much. Those 5 Mukesh Ambani mantras, I'm sure they will reverberate during the AD 2022 and much beyond. I must say, anytime I'm talking to you, I had not years to my life, but life to my years. These have been very inspirational moments with you. And I'm sure that this fireside chat will lit a new fire in the belly of our listeners, our leaders, our thinkers. There will be a new energy, new hope, new aspiration. Thank you again, Mukesh Bhai, on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Mashelkar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambani and Dr. Mashelkar, for that discussion. This concludes session 1 on day 1 of AED 2022. I want to extend our thanks to all the speakers and guests who've engaged with us today. Session 2 commences later today at 3:45 p.m. IST. Please join us back then. Thank you.